In the early 1960s, an American writer named Kurt Vonnegut introduced a terrifying idea. A fictional substance created by a scientist called Ice-9. It wasn't just ice. It was a form of water that stayed solid, even at room temperature. And the most horrifying part? If even a single crystal touched normal water, it would spread, freezing every ocean, lake, and river on the planet. Vonnegut's story was fiction, but the idea behind it, the thought that a small change in water's structure could end life, fascinated real scientists. So let's imagine for a moment that somehow, in a lab or by accident, it did. What if Ice-9 became real? What if every drop of water on Earth froze in one instant? How would our planet react? What would happen to life, to the atmosphere, to the shape of Earth itself? So in this video, we'll uncover how this fictional substance connects to real scientific research on water. What would actually happen to our planet's geography if all water froze at once? And the terrifying chain reaction that would follow. To understand the idea of Ice-9, we first have to understand something strange about the most familiar substance on Earth, water. Water isn't as simple as it looks. Under different pressures and temperatures, it can form many different types of ice, not just the one we see in our freezer. Scientists have discovered more than 20 distinct crystal structures, known as Ice-1, Ice-2, Ice-3, and so on, each behaving differently at the molecular level. For example, Ice-2 forms deep under high pressure and remains solid even when warmed. And on distant icy moons, like Europa or Ganymede, other exotic forms of ice may exist that never melt, no matter how close they get to sunlight. This is where fiction begins to brush against reality. When Vonnegut imagined Ice-9, a type of water that stays frozen at room temperature, he wasn't entirely inventing it from nothing. He was exaggerating something real. The way crystal structures can completely change how a substance behaves. In his novel, a single Ice-9 crystal could force every other molecule of water to copy its structure, turning the entire planet solid. Scientifically, this process is called nucleation, when one molecule's pattern spreads like a chain reaction through the rest. It's how snowflakes form, or how crystals grow. It begins with a single droplet, an unassuming fragment of Ice-9. At the molecular level, it's a chain reaction. One water molecule adopts the ice's crystal structure, forcing the next molecule to do the same, and the next after that. Within seconds, a small puddle could be completely solid. But water is everywhere. Rivers, lakes, and oceans are all connected. Once the first body of water freezes, the reaction spreads relentlessly. Imagine coastal cities, the docks, the ports, the waves, all crystallizing in a matter of minutes. Ships become frozen monuments, waves are halted mid-crest, and fish and marine animals are trapped beneath solid ice. Freshwater systems would vanish just as quickly. Rivers feeding millions of people would harden. Waterfalls would freeze mid-air, and even groundwater could be affected if the Ice-9 structure spread into aquifers. Hydroelectric dams would stop producing power instantly. Entire cities relying on water and electricity would face an immediate crisis. The effect wouldn't just be local. The planetary balance would collapse. Oceans drive weather patterns, creating currents that regulate temperature and distribute heat globally. With currents halted, climates would swing wildly. Equatorial regions could become frozen deserts, while polar ice sheets expand further, crushing coastlines and triggering massive earthquakes as tectonic plates adjust to the new load. Clouds rely on evaporation. Without liquid water, the hydrological cycle fails. No rain, no snow. The atmosphere itself would dry. Winds would stagnate, storms would vanish, and the world's delicate weather systems would collapse. Life would vanish rapidly. Fish, mammals, birds, and countless microbes depend on liquid water. Forests would die as rivers and rainfall stop. Animals would die of dehydration or starvation. Entire ecosystems, evolved over millions of years, would collapse within hours. Humanity, if it survived in shelters or underground bunkers, would face unimaginable challenges. Without water, agriculture would fail. Energy production would halt. The frozen oceans would trap ships, stopping trade and transport worldwide. Within days, society as we know it would cease to exist. And yet, the freeze doesn't end there. Ice reflects sunlight far more than water does. This albedo effect would cause global temperatures to plummet even further. Permafrost would expand rapidly. Volcanoes and tectonic activity could destabilize under the weight of frozen oceans. The Earth, once warm and blue, would turn into a silent, frozen wasteland. And in the midst of this catastrophic stillness, there's a haunting lesson. Ice Nine may be fiction, but the principles it explores, chain reactions, fragile ecosystems, and the interconnectedness of our planet are very real. Every system we rely on is delicate. One small change in the wrong place can cascade into a planetary disaster.
When the last oceans freeze, Earth would be transformed beyond recognition. The seas, once dynamic and alive, would be immense sheets of ice stretching endlessly. Waves frozen mid-crest. Tides stopped in their tracks. Cities along coastlines buried beneath frozen walls of water. Ships and ports encased forever. Life on the surface would be nearly impossible. Fish and marine mammals trapped under thick ice would perish. Birds, insects, and land animals dependent on water would disappear. Forests would dry, rivers freeze, and soil would crack under frost. Even microorganisms, the foundation of life, could not survive the sudden loss of liquid water. Planetary systems would shift dramatically. Without the regulating effects of ocean currents and evaporation, climates would become extreme and unstable. The Earth would enter a deep ice age. Sunlight reflecting off the frozen surfaces would accelerate cooling, creating a feedback loop of unstoppable freezing. Humanity, if still alive, would be forced underground or into isolated shelters. Food, water, and energy scarcity would dominate existence. Civilization would fragment, and social order would collapse. The planet would fall silent, a frozen monument to both nature and human curiosity. And yet, beyond the devastation, there's a deeper message. Ice Nine isn't just a story about frozen water. It's a story about human responsibility. Our curiosity and drive for discovery can push the boundaries of nature, sometimes with unpredictable, catastrophic consequences. Even in real-world science, researchers study extreme forms of ice, climate engineering, and planetary systems. The Earth's balance is delicate, fragile, and interconnected. One small change, one unintended action, could ripple across the globe in ways we cannot predict. Vonnegut's warning in Cat's Cradle may be fictional, but its lesson is real. Knowledge carries power, and with power comes responsibility. Ice Nine may never exist, but the fragility of our blue planet is very real.
The world we imagined in this video may be fiction, but its lessons are real. One small crystal, one tiny change, and the balance of our planet could shift forever. Ice Nine reminds us that knowledge carries power, and with power comes responsibility. Every experiment, every invention, every action has consequences that ripple far beyond what we see. So, as you go about your day, remember this: our planet is precious, our actions matter, and the thin line between creation and destruction is closer than we think. If this story has made you rethink the way you see water, life, and our planet, imagine what else we take for granted, and what we can do to protect it. Because the blue planet we know could freeze in a heartbeat if we're not careful.